It was just another ordinary Thursday at Oakwood High School. The students rushed through the hallways, chatting, laughing, and hurriedly moving between classes. Teachers worked through their lessons, unaware of what was about to unfold. In the background there was James, a janitor who had been working at Oakwood for nearly 2 decades. He was the quiet, unassuming figure who swept the floors, cleaned the classrooms, and fixed broken light bulbs without ever asking for recognition. To the students, he was just part of the scenery, someone whose presence was often overlooked. But for those who paid attention, James was a steady, dependable figure, always smiling, always kind, even on the hardest of days. James had lived a modest life. His job at the high school paid the bills, but there was little left over for luxuries. He had 2 children, a son and a daughter, both of whom were attending college. He was proud of them but worried about the burden of student loans. Every day he would get up early, work long hours, and head home late, only to do it all over again the next day. His old car had finally given out last week, and now he was taking the bus to work, a difficult adjustment for someone who had grown, accustomed to the freedom of having his own wheels. One particular day, as he finished mopping the floors in the hallway, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot of Oakwood High. It was a sleek, modern vehicle, and James barely noticed it as he continued his work focusing on his cleaning duties. He had no idea that the vehicle belonged to none other than Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, who had come to visit the school on a special mission. Barron, now a young adult, had been following a personal initiative to give back to communities across the country. His foundation had quietly been supporting a number of charitable causes, but today, he was on a mission to do something more personal. He had heard about James, the janitor, through a local charity that had been in contact with the school. The charity had been working to help James get by after his car broke down, but they had been struggling to find a way to help him directly. Barron, determined to make a difference, had decided to take matters into his own hands. As Barron walked through the school, a few teachers and administrators greeted him with polite smiles, but Barron wasn't there for small talk. He had one goal in mind. He made his way to the janitor's closet, where James was just finishing up his shift. James didn't recognize the young man who had entered the small room, but Barron extended his hand with a warm smile. "Hi, I'm Barron Trump," he said, his voice calm but genuine. "I've been hearing a lot about you." James looked up, surprised. Nice to meet you, sir. I'm just finishing up here. Is there something I can help you with?" Barron shook his head. "Actually, I'm here to help you," he said. "I heard about your situation, and I wanted to do something special for you." James furrowed his brow. "I'm not sure what you mean, sir. I'm just a janitor here." Barron smiled, then gestured toward the parking lot. "I've been following your story, and I know it's been tough for you lately, especially without a car. I'd like to offer you something. A gift. From me to you." James's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, sir?" he asked again, now visibly confused. Barron walked him outside, and as they approached the SUV, James stopped in his tracks. He couldn't believe his eyes. The sleek black vehicle gleamed under the sun, and Barron handed him the keys. "This is for you," Barron said. "I know it's not much, but I hope it helps. You've worked hard your whole life, and I want you to have something that makes life a little easier." James's hands trembled as he took the keys. His mind raced, struggling to process what was happening. "No, this can't be real. Are you sure? I don't know what to say." Barron simply nodded. "You've given so much to this community, and you've been there for so many people without asking for anything in return. I want to give you something back." James stood there, stunned, unable to speak. He never imagined that someone like Barron Trump would take the time to do something like this for him. He had always believed that people in positions of power were distant, disconnected from the struggles of everyday people like him. But Barron's gesture proved him wrong in the most profound way possible. Tears welled up in James's eyes as he finally found his voice. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. Barron gave him a warm, reassuring smile. You deserve it. Take care of yourself and enjoy the ride. James stood there, staring at the SUV, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He never expected something like this, and he knew that his life would never be the same. For the first time in years, he didn't feel burdened by the weight of his struggles. The generosity of a stranger had lifted a weight off his shoulders, and it filled him with hope for the future. As Barron drove away, James sat in the driver's seat of his new car, trying to steady his emotions. His hands gripped the steering wheel as he stared out the windshield, unsure of how to express the gratitude he felt. He had worked so hard for so long, and now, out of the blue, life had given him a gift he never could have dreamed of. James drove home that evening with the windows down, the cool breeze ruffling his hair, and for the first time in a long time, he felt free. As he pulled into his driveway, his children rushed out to greet him, surprised by the shiny new car in the driveway. "What's this, Dad?" his son asked, eyes wide. James simply smiled, handing them the keys. "This," he said, "is a reminder that sometimes life surprises you in the most unexpected ways." As his children embraced him, he knew that no material possession could ever match the sense of hope, love, and gratitude he felt in that moment. And as he looked at the SUV, he realized that this was more than just a car. It was a symbol of kindness, a reminder that sometimes a small act of generosity can change a life forever. In the following days, the news of Barron Trump's generous act spread through the local community like wildfire. James had become something of a local hero, not for any great achievement, but for his humble nature and the unexpected kindness he had received. People who had once overlooked him now stopped to say hello, offer congratulations, and ask how he was doing. It was as though the entire school and even the surrounding neighborhood had come together to support him in a way he had never imagined. James had always been a man of few words, but this new attention was both overwhelming and heartwarming. Teachers who had known him for years now took the time to thank him for his service. Parents of students who had seen him working tirelessly to keep the school clean and orderly offered their support in ways they never had before. They would stop by with small gifts, cards of appreciation, and kind words. But perhaps the most surprising thing was the shift in James himself. He found himself more confident, more willing to embrace the goodness that life had to offer. He no longer saw himself as just a janitor, someone who was merely going through the motions of daily life. He began to see his worth, not through the eyes of others, but through his own understanding of the impact he had on his family, his community, and even the world beyond. The SUV became more than just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol, a reminder that kindness, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, could change the course of someone's life. James didn't just drive it to work or to run errands. It became a part of his daily routine, something that made his burdens feel lighter and his steps a little bolder. One afternoon, as James was sitting in the park, enjoying the warmth of the sun on his face, he received a phone call from Barron Trump's office. The voice on the other end of the line was warm and sincere, and it only took a few seconds for James to realize who it was. "Hello, Mr. James," the voice said. "I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going with the SUV." James was caught off guard but grateful. "Oh, Mr. Trump, I don't know what to say. I'm doing well, really well. It's been an incredible change, and I just feel so blessed. I still can't believe it happened." Barron's voice was gentle, but there was a clear sense of purpose in his words. "I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to tell you something. You've made a difference to so many people in your community, even if you haven't always seen it. What you do matters, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that." James didn't know how to respond. He had never thought of himself as someone who made a difference, but Barron's words stirred something deep inside him. "Thank you, Mr. Trump," James finally said, his voice shaky with emotion. "You've given me more than just a car. You've given me hope. I don't know if I can ever thank you enough." Barron smiled on the other end of the line. "You don't have to thank me, James. Just keep being the good man you are, and that's enough." James hung up the phone, staring out at the horizon, overwhelmed by the kindness that had been shown to him. It wasn't just the car that had changed his life, it was the realization that, no matter how small one's actions seemed, they could have a profound impact on the world around them. In the weeks that followed, James found himself giving back to the community in ways he had never considered before. He began volunteering at the local food bank, helping to provide meals for families in need. He spent more time with his children, teaching them the values of kindness, humility, and hard work. And every time he passed the school on his way to work, he smiled, knowing that Barron's simple act of generosity had set off a ripple effect that had transformed his life and the lives of those around him. James had once lived his life with quiet anonymity, believing that his efforts would go unnoticed. But now, thanks to one unexpected gesture, he had found his place in the world, not just as a janitor, but as a man who mattered, who had the power to make a difference. And as he drove his children to school in his new SUV, with the wind in his hair and the open road ahead of him, he knew that the road to a brighter future had only just begun. As the months passed, James's life continued to transform in ways he had never imagined. His new sense of purpose inspired him to reach out and connect with others who were struggling, just as he once had. He began mentoring young people in his community, offering advice not just on practical matters like finding work or managing finances, but also on the importance of staying kind and humble, no matter what life threw their way. At Oakwood High, James's newfound confidence didn't go unnoticed. The students who once barely acknowledged him began to greet him with smiles and waves. Some even stopped to chat with him in the hallways, something he never would have expected. He had always worked quietly in the background, but now there was a certain reverence in the way people spoke to him. One afternoon, a group of students from the school's student council approached him while he was cleaning up after a school event. They had heard about Barron Trump's generous gift and the way James had turned his life around. They were inspired by his story and wanted to do something to give back. "Mr. James," one of the students said hesitantly, "we were wondering if we could do something for you. We've been planning a charity drive, and we thought maybe you'd like to be a part of it." James was taken aback. "For me? You don't have to do anything like that. You're the ones doing the work here." The student smiled. "But your story has inspired so many of us. You've taught us that kindness matters no matter who we are. We just want to show you how much we appreciate you." And so, the students organized a charity event in James's honor, a drive to raise funds for local families in need. They worked tirelessly, organizing food donations, gathering volunteers, and spreading the word about the event. James, humbled by their efforts, helped however he could, offering his time and support as they worked together. On the day of the event, the gymnasium was filled with donations, food, clothing, toys, and essentials for families who were struggling. It was a heartwarming sight, a testament to the power of community and kindness. As James walked around, shaking hands and thanking people for their contributions, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. Just a few months ago, he had been a man with little hope, uncertain about his future. Now he was surrounded by people who appreciated him, not for what he did, but for who he was. Later that evening, as the event wrapped up, the student council president approached James with a small envelope. "We wanted to give this to you," she said. "It's a token of our appreciation for everything you've done for us." James opened the envelope, revealing a note and a gift card for a local restaurant. The note read, "Your kindness has touched our hearts. Thank you for being a true example of what it means to give back. We hope this is just a small way for us to show our appreciation." James felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at the students gathered around him. He had never expected anything in return for his years of hard work, but this was something he would never forget. The love and gratitude that these young people showed him was more valuable than any material gift. As he left the event, that night the SUV Barron Trump had gifted him parked in front of the school, James drove home with a sense of fulfillment that he had never known before. He had always worked hard to take care of his family, but now, he understood that the true reward in life wasn't just about providing for those you loved. It was about leaving a legacy of kindness, one that would ripple out and inspire others. Few weeks later, James received another unexpected message. This time, it wasn't from Barron Trump directly, but from a local news station that had caught wind of the incredible change in his life. They wanted to interview him, to share his story with the wider community. When the interview aired, it was clear that James's story had touched many hearts. The segment went viral, and soon, people from all over the country reached out, sending messages of support and admiration. They too had been inspired by his humility, his resilience, and his ability to see the good in others even in the toughest of times. Through all of this, James remained grounded. He never let the attention or the accolades get to his head. He continued to go to work every day at Oakwood High, still the same humble janitor he had always been. But now, he understood that his worth wasn't defined by his job title or the things he owned. It was defined by the positive impact he had on those around him. As the years went on, James remained a beloved figure in his community. His children, too, were inspired by his example. They saw firsthand the importance of kindness, hard work, and humility, and they carried those lessons with them as they navigated their own journeys. And as for the SUV, it became a symbol of so much more than just a generous gift. It was a reminder of how one act of kindness, no matter how small it seemed at the time, could change a life forever. As James settled into this new phase of his life, he continued to focus on the people around him. His work at Oakwood High School, though still centered on the mundane tasks of janitorial duties, had taken on a new meaning. He felt a sense of fulfillment every time he walked down the hallways, knowing that the small acts of kindness he showed the students, helping them find lost items, offering a smile during tough days, or simply taking the time to listen, were making a difference. James's children had also become more involved in the local community. His son, who had once been hesitant about his father's modest life, now spoke proudly of the way James had inspired not just their family, but the entire town. He had become an advocate for those struggling to make ends meet, volunteering alongside his father at food banks and organizing community service projects for his college peers. James' daughter, too, had been touched by the overwhelming support. She had always admired her father's quiet strength, but seeing the ripple effects of his story had given her a new sense of purpose. She was working toward a degree in social work, inspired by the changes she had witnessed in her family's life. One day, while they were sitting at the dinner table, she said, "Dad, I think what you've done is incredible. You've shown me that you don't have to have a title or a big paycheck to make a difference. You've already done more for the community than some people will ever do in a lifetime." James smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride as he listened to his children speak. The life lessons he had imparted to them seemed to have taken root in ways he hadn't fully realized. Barron Trump's visit to the school had marked a turning point, but it was the ongoing support from the community that had truly solidified James's place in the hearts of those around him. His act of kindness toward the students, his willingness to mentor them, and the way he connected with people, whether they were his colleagues or strangers, had become his legacy. In the years that followed, Oakwood High School would often invite James to share his story with the new students. His role in their lives was no longer that of an invisible janitor. He was a mentor, a role model, and a living example of how compassion and hard work could turn a life around. Students would seek him out for advice, not just about school or work, but about life, love, and the importance of staying true to oneself. And though James never sought fame or attention, he found that his story, his humble, unexpected journey, had become a beacon of hope for others. People from all walks of life reached out to him, sharing their own struggles, their own dreams, and often asking for advice on how to overcome adversity. One particularly poignant moment came when a former student, who had gone through a rough patch and had dropped out of college, returned to Oakwood High to find James. The young man, now older and more mature, sought James out because he wanted to express his gratitude for the simple encouragement James had given him during a tough time. "Mr. James," he said, "I remember that day years ago when I was ready to quit everything. You told me to keep going, to not give up, and I didn't. I'm back in school now, working toward my degree, and I have you to thank for that." Tears welled up in James's eyes as he listened to the young man speak. It was moments like this that made him realize the far-reaching effects of kindness. He hadn't known it at the time, but his words had made a lasting impact on someone's life. That's when James understood that his true legacy wasn't about the SUV or the media attention. It was the countless lives he had touched along the way, just by being kind, just by being present. Eventually, James decided to retire from his janitorial job at Oakwood High. It wasn't an easy decision, but he knew it was time to step back and focus on other things, spending more time with his family, traveling, and continuing his volunteer work. The SUV, which had once symbolized a turning point in his life, now served as a symbol of his journey. It took him to places he had never imagined, but it was the people he met and the lives he touched that made the journey worthwhile. As he drove away from Oakwood High on his last day at work, James glanced at the school in his rearview mirror, reflecting on the incredible twists his life had taken. He knew that while his time as the janitor had come to an end, the story of his life was far from over. He had learned that no matter where life takes you, there is always an opportunity to make a difference, to lift others up, and to leave behind a legacy of love and kindness that will endure long after you're gone. And so, James continued to live a life full of purpose, surrounded by the love of his family, the gratitude of his community, and the unshakable knowledge that one simple act of kindness can change everything.